Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Meet the Author webinar series today. My name is Elena Massler. I'm with the National 4-H Council, and I'll be your moderator today. We are so excited today to be launching the revision of our photography curriculum. So this is a revision of the 2007 curriculum. It's just released. It actually showed up in our distribution center today and is live on our website today. So please be sure to check out our site, and I'll definitely put some links in the chat box for you there. So before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping notes. The first is that if you're having any technical difficulties, I suggest that you check out the Zoom help guide first. And if you're still having trouble, go ahead and type in the chat and I'll do the best I can. I will put a link to the help guide in the chat here in just a minute. I'd also like to point out that at the bottom of your screen, you'll see Q&A and chat features. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the Q&A and we'll answer them either throughout the presentation, and there will also be time at the end for more questions. And also you can use the chat box if you have any comments, any feedback. Please, we want this to be as interactive and as helpful for you all as it can be. And so with that, I'm pleased today to introduce Jeannie Gogolski. She's one of the authors of this curriculum. We have a great team, as you can see there on your slide. And I'll turn it over to her to walk you through the books today.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited about this project. It is just really hard for me to believe that it's been 12 years since we worked on the first round of this. Time passes. So I was just completely amazed when the national organization said it's been 12 years, it's time for a rewrite, and I'm really proud of the new books and excited to share them with you. So Bob Horton from the Ohio State University is one of the folks who helped us on the original documents, and so he helped out. Sally Ewan, my colleague at educationprojects.org, which is our company of curriculum writers and teacher professional development folks, and Scott Wittenberg, our local photography teacher at my local high school, were really big supporters of this project. So let's get started taking a look at it. Just as an overview, there are 3 books similar to the first 3 that we had with different levels. We tied them to the National Visual Arts Education Standards, and we designed them for youth grades 5 to 12. And you can imagine, if you have ever written curriculum or done workshops or worked with kids, it's a big challenge to, I think, address kids in the lower grades as well as the upper grades and keep them engaged and interested. But I think you're really going to enjoy the book. So let's take a look at them. Thinking about what's new, oh my goodness. When I looked through the 2007 version, I realized we talked about how to develop film in a dark room. Believe it or not, we talked about cropping pictures with a pair of scissors. So you can imagine things have really changed in photography with everyone having a camera in their hands, mostly in the name of by having a phone. So one of the first things we realized is we had no cell phone information in those old books, or very little. So we needed to add that. We also had to add a lesson on taking a selfie. And I didn't realize at the time that Kim Kardashian is considered to be the top leading expert in taking selfies. So while I'm not necessarily a fan, I did read all about how Kim Kardashian takes great selfies. So I think the book is I don't mention her naturally, but I think that you'll enjoy the lesson on taking selfies. Online sharing rather than printing photos, editing with apps, refreshed content and design. You're going to see all that in these new books. There are some things that are the same about the books, though. We already mentioned we kind of decided to do 3 levels. There's a lot to learn in photography. And each of the book is the table of contents. Each of the books laid out the same way. There's a project area. There are 4 project areas: equipment, lighting, composition, skill building. And in each of those levels, we have 2 to 4 activities usually, and talking it over at the end of each of the project areas. For this first book, we've kind of focused on keeping it simple, picking up a camera maybe for the first time, so holding it steady, how to use a flash, just some of the basics of using a camera or using a cell phone to get started taking photos. By the time you get to level 2, we're trying to ramp it up a little bit. So we're actually having the students take a look at selecting lenses, doing some special effects, kind of using a phone, for example, or a camera in some different ways to do interesting things. And the thing about this particular book, this second level book, I think you really get into some of the nitty-gritty of photography. Under the section of composition, we deal with the rule of thirds, the golden photos, that looking at different viewpoints and how space can tell a story and capturing a good candid. So while the first book is pretty much the basics, the second book ramps up the level of really beginning to look through your viewfinder and pay attention to what's going on. So when you look at the skill building section, we've added things like how to do a panorama, how to use different colors and a color wheel to have contrast. So taking the whole thing up a level is really what we're about in level 2. By the time you get to level 3, of course, we really wanted to take control of your equipment. So learning all about what a camera can do or what your cell phone can do is what the equipment section is about. And when you have lighting, what we've done is taking a look at challenges, like what do you do when the light is very low or very bright? And so trying to help youth who might be doing the project to really be able to use their equipment in some more advanced ways. And in the composition and skill building areas for this level 3 mastering photography, we tried to address a little bit more what I would call artistic, adding some art photography into this so that they begin to look at photography not just as telling a story or capturing a photo of your family or a birthday party or any of that, but really trying to create some beautiful, interesting photos that could be considered art. Then we did a few things in this last book that are a little bit tougher, like making a joiner, which a joiner is just a kind of a fun activity where you take different pictures of a room and then try to pull them all together. Again, it turns out to be almost like a piece of art. So by the time you get to book 3, hopefully you would have done some really, you've moved from being able to understand how to look through a viewfinder and capture a great photo for an event or even a sporting event, compared to creating some artistic photos where you've used the rule of thirds, you've used color, all of those things. Taking a look at each of these activity books, they're all, not only are the books laid out with the same 4 project areas, but the activities themselves are laid out. So I thought we'd just run through one quickly so that you can kind of see what each activity looks like. And I just chose this one randomly from book 2. Each of the books has this short introduction about what you're going to be focusing on. So this one just happens to be, you can see the title up there, a short sentence or 2 about an introduction. And then we jump right into the photo shoot part of it. And you all know how important it is to do experiential learning. You're 4-H extension folks, I'm assuming. And so you understand the value of getting youth involved right away in testing things out. And it's one of my favorite things about digital photography, of course. In the olden days, when you used to take a picture, you didn't want to waste film. You also didn't really know what you might be getting. But now in the days of digital photography, you can take as many pictures as you want. And then you can get rid of ones that you want to get rid of. So that's a really wonderful thing in terms of jumping in. So each one of these activities has the short introduction, Then instructions for the activity where you just jump in and do them. And then probably the most important part of this are the photos themselves. And the photos, unlike in some books where photos are used to, just make things look nicer and more interesting, or these photos in this book are part of the lesson. They're important as part of the teaching part of it. So the photographs will actually do some teaching too. They're part of the experience. The photos will have a question, like, does this photo meet the rule of thirds? So each photo that you will see in the book, for the most part, when we're involved in the activities, will ask youth some questions to help them understand what the activity is about. This is the next page, the same thing. We're going right on with book 2, activity 6, and there'll be a little bit of background, and we've tried to keep it short. We're not trying to explain everything that there is about the rule of thirds here, but we're trying to give them a little bit of information that might pique their curiosity about it. There's always a challenge yourself. That challenge yourself as a photographer section in each of the lessons is really our career focus. We wanted to, as part of these books, we wanted to make sure that students were considering this to be not only a fun lifetime skill, perhaps, but also something that might interest them. So if they find themselves being interested in terms of a career, the challenge yourself is helps to point them to doing that kind of thing. The learner outcomes I know are familiar to you all. The project skill, life skill, educational standard, as I mentioned, that's connected to visual arts, the success indicator, all those I know are familiar things that you all understand, and so they're laid out in every lesson. And then again, you can see the photograph there that asks a question. And in this case, the rule of thirds, you can see the overlay on this particular picture that helps youth understand what we're talking about when it comes to the rule of thirds. Then we go, this book has a lot of photographs, so there's not many words on this page, but there are 3 key photos with some questions, all addressing the skill that they're trying to learn there. So rule of thirds. How does this photo capture the rule of thirds? Is this photo off center? Is the focus point wrong? Or are they does it meet the rule of thirds, and in what way? So always the pictures will help teach what we're trying to have the youth understand. You can see a couple more here. Aren't these great photos? I mean, I'll talk about them shortly, but I think you're going to find the book is not only beautiful, but intriguing. It draws you in because of the great photography. We always talk about reflections and how to exhibit your work. So, you do want the students to have some ideas about exhibiting. And in the past, we would say things like, print out your favorite photo and put it in a frame, and talk with them a little bit about that. But what we know about the way students and the way people share photos and keep photos will be something that there are lots of opportunities to do online. So I think this is someplace a project helper is really going to be key. To help them decide where they're going to store their photos, to help them figure out how to cull through them, to do some experimenting and editing. So it might be in Google Photos, or I think there are lots of different opportunities and locations where students can store their photos, edit their photos, sort their photos. This would be something I think they should collaborate on with a project helper so that they can decide on something that would be useful for them. I mean, I use Google Photos all the time, but not everybody is comfortable with that. So, they'll want to have a way to improve their photos. They'll want to have a way to sort their photos, and they'll want to have a way to share their photos. So that part can be decided on with a project helper. We also have connected, I've already mentioned this, we use the National Visual Arts Education Standards, and unlike sometimes where, we say we kind of focus on second grade or fourth grade or whatever, we addressed a variety of ages and stages here. So if you read through these learning outcomes, what you're going to discover is sometimes they say fourth grade and sometimes they say 11th grade. And, I think that it's mostly about interest levels. A fifth grader can take some really amazing photos. A 12th grader maybe hasn't had a lot of experience with photography. So they can be more of a beginner than a younger student. So I think it's more about interest than it is about the particular grade level with these books. As you can see, there's not a lot of text, and although we tried to kind of get the middle of the road, looking at the language that we used and everything, there's a glossary in the back because we did have to use some photography language. But we tried to keep it pretty simple and use a lot of photos so that students of any age can be excited about this and get engaged with it. Okay, so you can see some photos there. I already mentioned these photos. One of the things that was the best part, the most fun about this project, truthfully, is that when I did speak with our photography teacher over at our local high school, we decided to engage students in taking these photos. So when you see this book, you will see that each photo has a credit, and most of them are from the students. And one of the most interesting parts of this book, I think, is we actually engaged them in deciding what kind of photo might teach the concept we were trying to reach. So for students taking photography, that's a great skill. I think they got a lot of benefit from being a part of this project, just because we said to them, let's take some pictures that will help to teach the rule of thirds. What do those need to look like, as an example? So as you look throughout, you're going to see the photos with the credits on them, and they are from the students at Upper Arlington High School. And we do have a quick video. Elena, you ready? Would you like to share that video?
Yes, absolutely. So give me 1 second here and I will pull the video up. Okay, here we go.
Hi, I'm Scott Whittenberg. I teach photography at Upper Arlington High School and host Photography 101, a podcast on iTunes with over 20,000 subscribers. When I was asked to contribute to the new 4-H photography book series last year, I saw this as an excellent opportunity for my advanced photo students to take part as well. I've had the privilege of having many of these students for all 4 years they've been in high school, and it's been a thrill watching them grow as photographer artists. When I asked my students if they'd be interested in taking part in this adventure, they were more than willing. Many of the photos they shot were done on spec, and I thought they did an excellent job taking on this assignment. I'd like to introduce you to several of these student photographers now, so you can put the faces to the photo credits. These students are all in my first period honors photo class. Brooke DeWalt, Jasmine Ralston, Michaela Moretti, Susan Kim, and Demi Souter. Here are some of the seniors in my advanced photo class. They'll be graduating this year. Kaylee Ballou, Olivia Carlton, and Holly Darling. These students are all in my sixth period honors photo class. Emma Switzer, Madeline Melregan, and Adelaide Baldwin. And another senior from my advanced photo class, Jenna Rares. And the youngest student photographer, 7th grader Joanna Sudler. Megan Keeler is another senior in my advanced photo class, and she is one of the most prolific student photographers taking part in the project. I asked Megan her thoughts about the 4-H photography book series.
I think it really benefits kids that are developing an interest in photography. When I was in middle school, I became really interested in it, but I didn't know much, and I didn't have, it wasn't really included in my art classes in middle school. It is now in high school, but I didn't have that when I was initially interested in looking into it. And this 4-H book really provides kids a source to go to, a reliable source not just some random YouTuber saying, well, this is how you do it, and it's really not. And it gives a lot of tips, and it just kind of guides you through the process, starting very basic, but then taking you to higher level photography.
Okay. So I think you can see from the video, and I'll let Jeannie speak to it again, but obviously what a great story for a book that's for youth, also being partly developed by youth. So we do think that's a great story, and I'd like to thank Scott, the instructor, and all of the youth and his programs for contributing to these books. Okay, so are there any questions? Go ahead and type questions in the Q&A box or even in the chat. While you're thinking of questions, I will share that the photography books will be offered at a 25% off discount from now until May 21st. So that's next Tuesday. So if you're interested in the books, now is a great time to stock up. And I will also mention that on our website, there's what we call the Look Inside feature for each book. So you'll be able to see the first dozen or so pages of each level, and so you can see the table of contents. You can see a few sample activities just to give you more of a sense. And also note that this webinar is being recorded, and we'll post it to our YouTube channel and have the presentation slides available also. So if you want to watch it again, come back and reference it, share it with your friends, you'll be able to do that. You must have covered everything, Jeannie, because there are no questions.
Wow, I'm a little surprised by that, I'll admit. I think that, you know, I think one of the things that's interesting when I look at that group of kids, you know, I see they all look the same. They're girls. And if you know anything about teaching high school, this was kind of a volunteer assignment at the end of their, you know, like we worked on it all year, but a lot of them were seniors. And so it's interesting that they chose to be part of this project. And we culled through a ton of photographs. So to be chosen to have their photographs published has been a very exciting thing for them. I can't tell you how excited they are to be part of the project.
Great. Well, we actually, we have had some questions come in. So the first one is that this is intended for grades 5 to 12. Is there a certain age range you would recommend for each level? Is it really more skill-based? What are your thoughts around that?
I really do think it's more skill-based. I mean, when I was looking at it, we wanted to make it accessible. You know, I don't want to say, no, you can't have fifth graders do that mastery level. I do think it's all about interest too. So you're going to have some students that I think any grade level really could address these things. So I think it's more about interest and skills than it is about grade level. You know, when you all have them in your hands, you can take a look at the reading level, because really that was my only concern, trying to make the reading level accessible for everybody. But because it is so skill-based and activity-based, I think anybody can do it.
Yeah, and I know I certainly would have to start with the beginner level on that one. Okay, next question. Is the golden triangle still included in the curriculum? And if so, can you provide a quick explanation?
Sure. The golden triangle is all about, you know, the first lesson right before that is really the, it's right after the one I just showed you that was the rule of thirds. So the golden triangle, you know, the rule of thirds is all about positioning a focal point in your viewfinder. And the golden triangle is a bit like that too, but it kind of circles in. And when you see it, it's a little bit of math too. We were talking about looking at how when a golden triangle kind of pulls you down into a photograph. So it's that next level right after the rule of thirds. And it's not always intuitive how to take a picture that kind of pulls you down into a focal point. But yes, it's in book 2. It's in book 2, I think, lesson 7, which is just a miracle that I can even know that. That's a miracle, period. That's a miracle. But yes, it's there.
Super. Thank you. Okay, we have a question from Jane Wright, actually, in Ohio.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah, she says she loves the updated content of the books, and thank you for doing this. Can you talk about the number of activities and the time expectations for completion?
That is a great question. We had a lot of trouble with this. The first time, Jane, when we wrote these books, we had, I think we had 3 equipment lessons and then 4, we put the same amount of lessons in each of the 4 project areas. This time we didn't hold so hard and fast to that rule. So some of the books, I think they range from about 14 or 15 lessons all the way up to 17 or 18. We were more interested in making sure that we included them at the proper level than I didn't ever want to just make up a lesson just so that we would have 4 in that category, or so we were a little bit more loosey-goosey this time than we were the first time we wrote those books. I think each lesson, again, I hate to keep leaning back on this skill level all the time, but if a youth is really interested in taking a lot of photos or spending a lot of time honing their skills, the lesson could, they could spend a week on it. But most kids, I think, the lessons were really designed to take a small skill area and try to push it out. So I think that, a half an hour, 45 minutes maybe for a student to give it a try, because each of those photo shoots say, try this. And some of them say things like, take a picture at dawn, take a picture at noon, take a picture in the evening, notice the lights. So there's a lot of flexibility there for the amount of time it might take. If you wanted to do one a week, though, I think that would be if I was a project helper, I think one skill a week might be a great thing. Just depends on how fast people want to move through it.
Okay, super. Next couple of questions I can answer really quickly. The first is, what is the cost of the curriculum? So each book is $9.95 and a set of 3 is $25.95. But as I mentioned, they're all 25% off right now. So now's a great time to purchase them. The next question is this curriculum a leader guide or a member book? And it's a member book, so it's designed for the youth. So each youth should have his or her own book. And there are notes in the beginning of each book with kind of instructions to the project helper. But the book is definitely designed as a member-driven activity. Do you have anything to add to that, Jeannie, or did that cover?
No, I think that's good. I mean, there was some talking about the fair entries, and naturally that's different everywhere, and so it was kind of we used a pattern in talking. You're going to lean on your project helper there to help navigate that section. So we tried to make that clear in the books.
Yeah, and to that point, we did have a few questions come in about whether the new books will be implemented for county and state fair competitions. So unfortunately, we're not really able to answer that question, so you'll need to check with your county or state offices. So as Jeannie mentioned, that's different everywhere. So sorry that we can't give you a little more direction on that, but I know each state will have its own requirements around that. Okay. If any other questions, don't be shy. While we're waiting for potentially more questions, I would like to share that along with Jane Wright from Ohio and Nia Fields in Maryland, we have a curriculum development community of practice that's open to all 4-H educators, whether you write curriculum, whether you serve as a peer reviewer, whether you use curriculum, whether you're just interested in it. So please come and join us. I'll actually pop the link in the chat box of where you can find us on eExtension. We host chats approximately quarterly. So last month we talked about peer review, and that's just an informal gathering to share resources and collaborate. So we hope that you'll be able to join us. So this is the link that I'm putting into the chat box. Okay. And I just heard from Jane in Ohio, who says that for now, Ohio is still using the old books. So for those of you who asked about the fairs, that's the ruling for now. We had a question about the size of the book. So these are 9 by 12, I believe. So just like a little bit bigger than your 8.5 by 11. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking in terms of size or page count. In terms of the page count, they run between, I think, like 84 and 96 pages, depending on the book. So they're pretty hefty books.
Lots of photographs. I mean, I think that is one of the reasons. You saw one lesson there extended out 4 or 5 pages. Normally we wouldn't do that. But since it's photography, we felt like it was important to use photographs to teach. I think the books are beautiful. They really are beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like there aren't any other questions for now. So Jeannie's email is in the slides, which we will have posted on our site within the next couple of days. So if you have any curriculum-specific questions, feel free to reach out to her. If you have any Shop 4-H or ordering sorts of questions, feel free to reach out to me. And again, thank you so much for your time. Jeannie, thank you for developing on this.
It was a joy. Working on the books was a joyful thing. So I'm glad you all like it, and I welcome any questions that you all have about it. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of it.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody, for attending today, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Elena.